Hello and welcome to the behind the scenes video for the film The Other Gods. Now, I hadn't originally planned to make a behind the scenes video for this film, but quite a few people have asked me quite a few questions about it, so what the heck, here we go. This film is based on the short story The Other Gods by H.P. Lovecraft, and it's something I've been wanting to adapt for quite some time now. It's I think it's got a wonderful fairy tale quality. It's one of Lovecraft's very dreamlike or mythic stories, and I know that some people don't like him. I love him, and I'll probably do more of those eventually. All the live-action bits for this film was shot in a small room at a boarding school, and I was given access to this room. And I simply covered one wall and a part of the floor with green screen fabric. And the room was actually too small to be used as a good green screen studio. It all worked out in the end, but as you can see, it was not really practical to shoot stuff like climbing mountains and things like that. There are two characters, at least two human characters in this film. Barzai the Wise and Atal, his disciple. Barzai was played by Håkan Håkansson, who is an old friend of mine, and he's already been in a few of my video projects. And Atal was played by Björn Hansson, whom I've known since he was just a little kid, and he's been in quite a few of my film projects. The clothes and stuff they are wearing, it's all a mishmash of stuff found at garage sales and thrift stores, and clothes created by my costume making friend Lilith Mattsson. I'm using a fairly simple Sony consumer equipment camera and a Rode microphone. For the effects editing, I'm using After Effects. I'm subscribing to Adobe Cloud, and I pay the full amount, which at the moment of this video's making is about $60 or so per month, and it gives me access to all of Adobe's software as far as I know. The chroma key green screen work is taken care of using Primet Keyer from Red Giant. As you can see, you can start off with pretty crappy green screen footage, and Primet Keyer has a lot of tools that will help you pull a good key anyway, but of course it's recommendable that you try to get the best possible green screen footage. But if it's not possible, I've noticed that Primet Keyer can be a real lifesaver. The backgrounds are all created in Photoshop using images I have downloaded from Wikimedia, and also using photos I have been given by lots of people I know who are both eager travelers and very good photographers. To make the backgrounds, I've simply cut a little piece here and a little piece there from various image sources, and I have mixed them together in layers, either in Photoshop or in layers in After Effects, depending on what the scene will need to show. I do use a fair amount of stock footage in my films, but hey, what's good enough for Edward D. Wood is good enough for me. I use stock footage simply because it's convenient. In this film, all the skies are time-lapse stock footage. I use a subscription service at videoblocks.com to download whatever stuff I need. The actual gods of the mountain are also mostly stock footage. I used various digital animations of lights and shapes and mixed them all together in After Effects. Also in After Effects, I applied various filters to the shots so they'd have a more dreamy appearance. Now, enough with all the digital trickery and fakery. Now on to the other gods, which are all stop-motion puppets, except for one, and we'll get to him. Let's start with this guy, who is the Howler, I think it's called, the Howler avatar of Nyarlathotep, or Nyarlathotep, however you wish to pronounce him. The skeletons for all my puppets, or the armature as it's often called, they're all made out of aluminum wires, and the hard parts, the unbending parts, are covered with friendly plastic thermoplastic. You make this material soft by heating it with a heat gun. You stick it onto the aluminum wires, and as it cools it gets very hard. I usually start off every puppet with a sculpture of the head, or the head and the torso. I use Chavant clay and make a mold from dental plaster over the sculpture. I then cast a loose latex skin from this mold, and it kind of becomes the defining part of the puppet from which I work out all the other details. Since the body of the Nyarlathotep puppet is so thin, I used cotton dipped in tinted latex to build up the muscles and sinews. The torso is padded with soft polyurethane foam. The puppet is then covered with patches of thin latex skin which I've cast in skin texture molds, made from sculptures, dried fruit skins, etc. And the whole thing is painted with Pax paint, which is a mix of acrylic paint and Pros-Aid prosthetic glue. I usually add a dab of acrylic airbrush paints over that. The tentacle on his head, or its head, is made from a single piece of thick aluminum wire which has been ground down at the tip to make it taper out and become softer and more pliable, and in effect easier to animate than the rest of the tentacle, which needs to be sturdy at its base. As you can perhaps see, the aluminum wire has then been covered with soft string, which is then soaked in tinted latex. I used a bright red latex tint, but as the latex dries it turns a tan color and makes the tint turn darker too, so I end up with a more subdued red, what I like to call the DC Comics movie red, or dirt red. I don't know how well you can see this, but the shiny rings at the bottom of its feet are wing nuts, which have been attached to the armature with friendly plastic, and I can then attach or tie down the puppet to my animation stage using a screw through a hole in the stage and up into the wing nut. You do need some kind of tie down or the puppet will fall over during animation. Now this little fellow is my interpretation of what is in the Cthulhu myth is called Servitor of the Outer Gods. There are some kind of smaller gods or demigods or monsters that spend their entire lives, it seems, floating around in space and playing flutes to pacify bigger horrors like Azathoth. Now, this puppet is mostly built up from scratch. He's got the usual aluminum wire friendly plastic armature, but the head is a wooden ellipse. The flute is the handle from a discarded brush, and I've attached a wooden ball and a plastic thingy I found a while ago. The fingers are also armatured with very thin wires, so he can be animated playing the flute. The arms are not armatured, however. They're just hollow tubes of soft string and latex because the hands are attached to the flute, and when I animate the head, the arms will simply follow, and I don't have to think about them. The puppet is padded with polyurethane foam and covered with patches of latex skin, which are actually casts from some strange lichen I found growing on rocks by the sea. The spikes on the back are created by taking toilet paper and dipping it in latex and rolling it between my thumb and my index finger. The puppet is attached to a long metal rod going down into a block of wood, and it makes the puppet float. I'm not a big fan of using wires to support flying puppets, so I go with rods instead. The bubbly entity behind the Servitor is supposed to be Yog-Sothoth, and it's an After Effects animation using Photoshop bubbles originally made for another film, the Lovecraft Alphabet, and I simply reused it here. This little god was not based on any particular creature or character from the Lovecraftian pantheon. I just wanted to make something that looked vaguely unsettling, and anything slightly human usually does that to you. The front of this puppet was sculpted in Chabant clay to create a reproduction in latex. The rest of the puppet was built up using cotton and latex over a super simple armature made with aluminum wires and an old plastic pill jar. This slightly fungus-like character is not based on anything in the Cthulhu mythos either. I just wanted yet another strange-looking creature floating around. So again, it's suspended on a green rod. This one is built up in a very simple and basic way. I used another plastic pill jar and simply built up all the features using cotton dipped in tinted latex. The eyes are attached to aluminum wire stalks, and I made the eye lenses by adding drops of a scrapbooking plastic called glossy accents over a printout of photoshopped eye images. Now, this puppet is supposed to be based on something from the Cthulhu mythos. It's my sort of attempt to make something out of the entity known as McGrath, the black goat of the woods, the mother of 1,000 young, and so on and so forth. Like the other puppets, parts of her are first sculpted in clay to produce portions of latex skin. I made a whole bunch of those aluminum wire soft string tentacles to create a sort of skirt made from waving arms. And the rest of the puppet was built up with polyurethane foam, cotton and latex. And the only thing that sets this puppet apart from the rest of the other gods' puppets is the head, which is a plastic skull. It's cast from a silicone mold and has a jointed jaw with a latex tongue that can be animated. While I was animating her, she was suspended on a concealed leg in the midst of all the tentacles underneath here, which I could tie down to my animation stage and keep her perfectly still while animating. One of the dark gods was created entirely using digital effects. I wanted an entity that was both tangible and abstract, so I used the old Ernst Haeckel book Art Forms in Nature and prepared some of the artwork in Photoshop so I could animate lots of little bits in multiple layers using keyframes in After Effects and create a movable whole from them. There's also a sort of floating mouth suspended in space surrounded by tentacles. This creature was made from animated puppet parts, but mixed together in After Effects. This flower-like head had a sculpted front and backside reproduced in latex, with lots of small bits of wire attached to permit me to animate this fringe of petals, we could call them, as well as a mouth that splits up in 4 parts. The tongue was another puppet part that was animated separately. The tentacle surrounding this mouth, then, was just the one tentacle. Made just like all the other tentacles I've created for the other puppets, only much, much bigger. And it's attached to a piece of wood painted green screen green, so I can just clamp it down on my animation stage and it'll stay put. And I made 2 or 3 animations of it just kind of squirming about. Well, that's about it. I hope you have enjoyed this little peek behind the scenes of the other gods, and thanks for watching. you.